Hey everybody, Hake Hardware here. Welcome to episode 3 of Dusty Fans. We finally have some success with the MSI GTX 980 gaming. This one did see some improvements, and it was actually one of the more difficult cards that I've cleaned before because it has 16 thermal pads that needed to be replaced, and cutting those things up and getting them perfect was kind of a pain, but we ultimately had success, which is great. So this is a pretty old card. I purchased it recently, so I've only had it for a little bit. I can't remember where I got it from. So if you are the previous owner, uh, somebody from Reddit, probably. But it is an older card, 11 years old. Didn't look like it had been cleaned before, so this was probably its first cleaning, but it looked immaculate. The thermal pads were the thing that most likely made a big difference. They were a little bit crusty, but as far as dust, there really wasn't much dust. So let's just get into the benchmarks here. Our before temperature was 69 degrees Celsius with a 3913, so really good benchmark. And then after we were down 2 degrees and we picked up 7 points on the benchmark, but same frames per second. And you'll see in the stress test, it's just running better. Everything's more stable. Temperatures are looking good over the long term. So this card is great. And the before after, you can see it could be the lighting. You can see it's a little bit more tinted on this one. I'm trying to get better at keeping the lighting the same before and after, but sometimes it's like different times of the day when I do these shots versus before and after. So it does look pretty good. The but again, this was kind of a pain to clean. And I think as I get like to the newer GPUs, like if I eventually get into like the 1000 series, like the 1080s, I think it's going to be even worse because they just add more and more thermal pads. But the older GPUs, like the 600, 700 series, are really easy. It's usually just like a couple thermal pads. So yeah, this one was pretty good. Feel free to read through the blog. There's some photos in here. You can see the thermal paste actually was pretty bad, but I was able to get everything off using soapy water and isopropyl alcohol. This long one here was like bone dry and completely different than the other ones. So I don't know if maybe somebody might have cleaned this before. Either way, it was pretty bad. Um, so let's just jump into yeah, if you want to go through the media, there's tons of photos here, so just feel free to take a look. I keep forgetting to get after photos for the cleaning. So like I have, these are, you can see all the different spots I needed to put the thermal pads on, and you'll see in the video too. But the stress test is pretty good. The only difference looks like the max clock speed went down a little bit, but it didn't seem to affect performance. Everything else was looking great. And you can see it just never uh, reached the temperatures that the other one did. Um, Clock speeds are looking good. Power draw, fan speed, of course, because it's running a bit cooler. It doesn't need to use. So we dropped 6% on the fan speed, and we maintained a 2 degrees cooler temperature. So that I'd say that's a pretty big win. And this thing's running really good. I just had light dust. I put 2 years, but honestly, that was mainly just from the look of the dust. Sometimes I fill that out before I actually crack it open, just as like a outside look. And there was like almost no dust on this thing. I don't know how people. I live in Arizona, so there's dust everywhere. I don't know how people keep their GPUs from getting super dusty. 16 thermal pads, just absolutely insane. One thermal paste. I used a lot of isopropyl alcohol just to make sure I really got this thing rinsed off. Longest GPU yet to clean, just because there's so many different parts and thermal pads and everything. So this one was a lot going on. This will be a giveaway. I'm still working on how exactly the giveaways are going to be. I don't know like the legal implications or anything, and ultimately I just want these GPUs going to people that are going to be able to use them. So I'm just going to do a little bit more research, and I'll probably end up having like a giveaway page on Dusty Fans that people can go to and like register for a giveaway. And um, they'll just have to periodically like re-register or something. As far as leaderboards go for this card, number 2 for hottest before cleaning, number 2 for coolest after cleaning, biggest temperature drop, so 2.3 degrees Celsius, and that's kind of foreshadowing. I actually have another GPU that I've cleaned, and there's an entry on Dusty Fans for it yet. I just haven't done the video, which had an even bigger temperature drop. Let's see, benchmark score. Yeah, this one definitely the highest. I haven't done a 980 yet. Everything else has been a 6 or 700 series card, I think. I don't know if anybody is going to beat 16 thermal pads. I'll be interested to see if there's another GPU that has more than 16. I'm gonna cry. And then yeah, number 3, 10.9 years old. So overall, pretty cool. Let's just get into the video. I went a little bit different style for the cuts on this video. Previously I was leaving most of it in. Now I've tried to cut out a lot of like the boring stuff maybe. So the video is only a couple minutes long. So we'll give that a shot and we'll get started here. So let me just bring it back to the beginning and just play. So this one was pretty straightforward, getting that bracket off and then, you know, pretty standard, pulling off all the screws on the back and then cracking that open. And this is a much different style than the last two where you just have the thermal paste and there's no thermal pads touching, and then you have these like brackets and stuff that, not brackets really, but like that black covers and the heat sink there on the actual PCB itself. Getting the fan cables off was a total pain. This actually took a little bit of time as well. There's a bunch of little metal brackets you have to like undo it from. I like the fans on these. They're actually like a little bit, there's different gaps between. It's got sort of a pattern to it. But yeah, overall the GPU is in good shape. It just really needed a new thermal paste. And this is actually the first GPU where we're using the better, like actual name brand thermal paste. If you consider Thermalright a name brand, I actually really love that brand. Not sponsored, although if they want to sponsor me, that'd be great. Yeah, tons of thermal pads. And then a few more to get off the other. I guess that's like a heat sink. It's just metal bracket that kind of like sits over all the thermal pads. And these looked maybe like they were newer, but they were very sticky. And getting that thermal paste off was horrible. Like I really had to scrub it in the soapy water for a long time to get it all out. Just trying to brush some of that stuff off. I try to get it as clean as I can before I put it in the soapy water. That came off easy. The heat sinks are always easy. I wanted to get this LED out of here so that I could totally clean this thing without worrying about messing it up. You had to take a bunch of these little like hex screws off, but I kind of liked it. I mean, it wasn't too bad. It came out pretty easy. I'm always scared with like 10-year-old connectors. You can see, yeah, scraping that thing off, it was like rock hard. Alright, this is my favorite part. I love scrubbing this stuff down in soapy water. It's always a bit scary. I know, like dunking PCBs into soapy water, but everything that I've read is totally legit. I've been doing it for a long time. It was almost impossible to get all of the thermal pad residue off these things, but I did my best. Honestly, it doesn't have to be perfect. The main thing is just get most of the debris off. Yeah, I had to spend a little extra time on this, getting all that thermal paste off. But it paid off. I always like to get the brush and the connectors and stuff just to get out any dust that gets in there. But that also is like a good place for water to get trapped, so when I do the isopropyl alcohol, I always like dump it into the connectors just to make sure it flushes out all that water. And I let the card dry a lot longer. I'm just a little, I want to make sure the card's fully dry, so I let it sit outside. It's like 110 degrees outside, so it dried off pretty quickly. This is my least favorite part. It looks, I mean, the fans are probably always the most dusty, besides maybe the heatsink, but man, wiping off those fan blades is such a pain. I always want to try and pull them off from the actual fan motors and just like dunk them in soapy water, but I don't have a lot of experience with that. So if you know if you're able to just pop those like fan blades off, like that'd be great. I think for the blower style ones you can. I'm gonna try that on the next like older. I've got a few GPUs that are allegedly broken, so we'll see. If they are, I'm gonna try and mess with the fans to see if I can just pull those all the way off. Yeah, this part was tedious. It doesn't have to be perfect. Honestly, like I've never had any issues with thermal pads not being like exactly perfect, but they do need to be like approximately good so that it actually covers the chip. I can never get that grease off from the thermal pads. For some reason it stays forever, even with isopropyl alcohol. Yeah, they're good enough. Don't judge my thermal pad cutting, okay? It's not easy. I like this one. I guess those are probably like capacitors or something, but it had like the 3 holes that it fit around. This new thermal paste though, it's so sticky, it's almost impossible to spread. So yeah, you can see the cuts are much faster. Just to get through this a little bit quicker, not because like I'm gonna actually post like the full cleaning video, but for, you know, the walkthrough where we're just talking, it seems like we don't have to do every single thing. Okay, so here's the before rotation, and there's the after. I mean, this thing looks brand new. So it will be a giveaway if you're in the market for an MSI GTX 980 gaming. There's no reason this thing can't do like 1080p on a lot of games. So if that's good enough for you, if you're building a entry-level gaming computer, this would be a great option. All right, that's it for this episode. We do have another one here. So the next episode will be this GTX 770. Little, I guess, insight into the next one. We dropped 5 degrees Celsius, so pretty good. It'll be a fun one to go through. That'll be up hopefully shortly. We're almost back where our average temperature change is actually a positive, so that'll be great. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one where we do this GTX 770. Thanks for watching this episode of Dusty Fans. As always, if you have an old, nasty, dirty GPU sitting in a closet somewhere collecting dust that you'd like to donate to the channel and have it featured in an episode of Dusty Fans, please reach out to the email in the description. It's going to be dirtygpu@hakedev.com. Any GPU that gets donated to the channel, which scores higher than 60 frames per second on our 1080p benchmark and doesn't have any obvious signs of failure, gets donated back out to the community. So if you have something that you'd like to see featured on the channel, please reach out. And thanks for watching this episode of Dusty Fans, and I'll see you in the next one.